I used to believe love was measured by how much of yourself you were willing to give away. Not affection. Not time. Pieces. Real, bleeding pieces. Sleep. Peace. Money. Dignity. I gave them all away so often that I forgot what it felt like to wake up without a knot in my chest. I'm saying this now, in my own voice, because for a long time, I wasn't allowed to have one. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is that I was the one everyone leaned on. The fixer. The responsible one. The strong black woman who could handle anything. That label followed me like a shadow, heavy, flattering, and suffocating all at once. It started small. It always does. My mother needed help with rent, just this once. My brother needed bail money, because family doesn't let family sit in jail. My aunt needed someone to co-sign a loan because her credit was temporarily messed up. My cousins needed rides, phones, groceries, favors, excuses. And every time, I said yes. Not because I had plenty, but because I had guilt. Guilt is a powerful leash. Especially when it's wrapped in blood ties and church language and phrases like, "After everything we've done for you." I was the first one to leave the neighborhood. The first to get a stable job. The first to have something that looked like a future. And apparently, that meant my future was community property. I remember the first time my stomach dropped. I was sitting at my kitchen table, bills spread out like a bad tarot reading. Rent. Student loans. Credit cards. My phone buzzed. Mom. I already knew. Baby, she said, voice sweet, tired, practiced. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. She always said that. I stared at the numbers in front of me and felt something crack. Not loudly. Quietly. Like ice under pressure. I sent the money anyway. Then I sat there, staring at my empty bank app, wondering why helping my family felt exactly like drowning. If you're feeling this already, go ahead and hit like. You're not alone in this story. The resentment didn't arrive all at once. It crept in. Late at night. In the silence after I'd said yes again when I wanted to scream no. It whispered questions I wasn't supposed to ask. Why is it always me? Why does my success feel like a punishment? Why does loving them mean disappearing? The answers came faster than the relief ever did. Because they were used to it. Used to me fixing things. Used to me sacrificing. Used to me swallowing my anger and calling it maturity. The turning point wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No slammed doors. It was a text message. My brother needed money again. Same excuse. Same urgency. Same unspoken expectation. I typed the usual response, "I'll see what I can do," and then I stopped. My fingers hovered over the screen. My heart started racing like I was about to commit a crime. I thought about my rent. My exhaustion. My life shrinking every time I saved theirs. And for the first time in my life, I deleted the message. I wrote something else. I can't help this time. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No justification. Just a boundary. I didn't know it then, but that sentence would rewrite every relationship I had. Because when you stop being useful, people stop pretending they love you the same way. If this is hitting close to home, subscribe now. This story only gets deeper and darker from here. I thought silence would follow. Maybe disappointment. Maybe guilt-tripping. What I didn't expect was to become the villain in everyone's story overnight. The phone rang. Messages stacked up. Group chats exploded. My name was dragged through conversations I wasn't part of. Suddenly, I was selfish. Ungrateful. Changed. Cold. Too good for us now. All because I said no once. That's when I realized something terrifying. They didn't love me. They loved what I provided. And the moment I stopped, they decided to punish me for it. But that reckoning, that real fallout, that comes next. Silence is never empty when it comes from people who used to need you. It hums. It buzzes. It crawls under your skin at night and asks questions you don't want to answer. After I sent that message, I can't help this time, I kept my phone face down on the table like it might explode. My hands were shaking. Not because I was unsure, but because some part of me knew I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Nothing. No response from my brother. No, okay. No, I understand. No anger either. Just nothing. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. Because the silence felt strategic. Like a breath held too long. Like the pause before something breaks. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the apartment sounded louder. Every notification from a random app made my heart jump. I kept replaying old conversations in my head, every sacrifice I'd made, every bill I'd paid for someone else while my own life stayed on pause. I told myself I'd done the right thing. I told myself boundaries were healthy. But guilt doesn't disappear just because logic shows up. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. I was removed from the family group chat. No warning. No explanation. Just, gone. I stared at the screen, refreshing it like it was a mistake. Like maybe my phone glitched. But deep down, I knew exactly what that was. Punishment. You don't yell at the mule that stops pulling. You replace it. I found out what they were saying later. Not because they told me, but because silence never stays contained. My cousin texted me privately. Why would you embarrass your brother like that? Embarrass. That word sat heavy in my chest. I asked what she meant, and the response came fast, like she'd been waiting. He told everyone you refused to help when he was desperate. Mom's crying. Auntie said you've always thought you were better than us. I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. Desperate was a familiar word. They used it like a skeleton key. It unlocked my wallet. My time. My silence. But what about me? When was I desperate? When my bank account hit double digits. When I skipped doctor appointments. When I lay awake at night calculating how many hours of my life I'd traded away for peace I never actually felt. Nobody called that desperate. They called it responsibility. I typed a response, then erased it. Typed again. Erased again. Defending yourself to people who've already decided you're wrong feels like screaming underwater. Exhausting. Futile. So I said nothing. That's when they escalated. My mother stopped calling me baby. Her texts became cold. Formal. Like messages from a landlord instead of the woman who raised me. We need to talk. You've really hurt this family. I didn't raise you to be like this. That one hurt the most. Because it wasn't about money anymore. It was about identity. They weren't just mad I stopped helping. They were terrified I'd stopped belonging. If this tension feels familiar, go ahead and like the video. You understand more than you think. I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. How nobody asked how I was unless it led to a favor. How my achievements were acknowledged only if they benefited someone else. How love was always conditional, and the conditions were expensive. Then came the real betrayal. I found out my brother had told people I was hoarding money. That I'd forgotten where I came from. That I was acting white now that I had a career. That one cut deep. They took my boundaries and turned them into a character flaw. They took my exhaustion and called it arrogance. And suddenly, I wasn't the backbone of the family anymore. I was the problem. The villain. I wish I could say I stood strong. That I didn't waver. But the truth? I almost gave in. One night, I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, ready to send the money just to make it stop. Ready to buy my way back into their good graces. That's when I realized something terrifying. They weren't angry because they needed me. They were angry because they were losing control. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. But choosing myself came with a price. And they were just getting started collecting it. There's a special kind of fear that comes from realizing the people who raised you know exactly where to hurt you. They didn't come at me all at once. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they rotated. Like shifts. My aunt called first. The reasonable one. The mediator. Her voice was calm, disappointed in a way that felt rehearsed. You know your mother's blood pressure isn't good, she said. Stress affects her. And this situation you created, it's not helping. I closed my eyes. There it was. Not a request. A warning. My boundary suddenly had a body count. I asked her, quietly, why nobody was asking my brother to be accountable for his choices. She sighed. A long, dramatic sigh. Because he needs support right now. And you're strong enough to handle a little discomfort. A little discomfort. That's what they called it when my chest felt tight. When my sleep disappeared. When my peace was treated like spare change. After that came the church angle. My mother's friend, who hadn't spoken to me in years, sent me a Bible verse about generosity. About family. About sacrifice. No, how are you? No context. Just scripture, weaponized. Then came the rumors. I started noticing people I grew up with acting strange. Distant. Cold. Whispering when I walked past. Someone unfollowed me. Someone else blocked me. I hadn't announced anything. Hadn't explained myself publicly. Hadn't shamed anyone. But my family had filled in the gaps. With lies. Apparently, I'd said I was done with all of them. Apparently, I'd called them drains. Apparently, I'd told my brother he deserved what he got. None of it was true. But the truth doesn't travel as fast as a story that protects people from accountability. That's when it hit me. They weren't trying to understand me. They were trying to discipline me. Bring me back in line. Make an example out of me so nobody else got ideas. I started doubting myself. Late at night, that old voice crept back in. What if I really am selfish? What if this is just what family does? What if I'm the one who changed? If you've ever asked yourself those questions, pause for a second. Subscribe. Because this part matters. The breaking point came on a Sunday. I didn't go to dinner. Family dinner had always been mandatory. Unspoken. Sacred. It was where information was exchanged. Alliances formed. Guilt reinforced. I texted that I wasn't feeling well. That was true. I was sick of pretending. My phone rang an hour later. My mother. I almost didn't answer. When I did, her voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was calm. So you're really doing this, she said. You're choosing yourself over your family. I told her I wasn't choosing against anyone. I was just choosing me. She laughed. A short, sharp laugh that didn't hold any warmth. That's not how family works. And there it was. The rule I'd been living under my whole life. Family meant access. Family meant obligation. Family meant my needs came last. I told her I loved her. She didn't say it back. Instead, she said something I'll never forget. If something happens to me, remember this moment. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, my whole body shaking. That wasn't love. That was a threat wrapped in motherhood. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. Not into cruelty. Into clarity. They were willing to emotionally destroy me to keep me useful. And if I caved now, I would never get free. What I didn't know yet was that they had one final move left. And it was the ugliest one of all. Once the guilt stopped working, they changed tactics. They went public. Not on social media, not yet. That would have been too traceable. Too easy to challenge. They went relational. Phone calls. Side conversations. Concerned check-ins that weren't concerned at all. Just curious enough to spread a version of me that I barely recognized. I started hearing things secondhand. She's cold now. She thinks she's above us. Money changes people. Success got to her head. It was fascinating, in a sick way. None of them mentioned the years I paid bills in silence. None of them mentioned the emergencies that magically disappeared after I stepped in. None of them mentioned how I never once asked for anything in return. Because that didn't fit the new narrative. And they needed a narrative. Every family has one person who carries the shame. The blame. The dysfunction everyone else doesn't want to look at. That person became me. I noticed the shift in how people spoke around me. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Smiles didn't reach eyes anymore. Questions sounded like interrogations. So, you're doing really well now, huh? Must be nice not having to worry about anyone else. I realized then that they weren't just mad. They were resentful. My refusal forced them to face things they'd been avoiding for years. My brother's patterns. My mother's emotional manipulation. The family's dependence on one unpaid, unthanked woman. Instead of dealing with that, they chose a villain. If this part makes you uncomfortable, hit like. Growth rarely feels good. The real blow came when I found out about that meeting. They'd gotten together without me. Decided things about me. Decided how I'd changed. Decided how to respond. One of my cousins, one of the few still neutral, let it slip. They're worried about you, she said carefully. They think you might be going through something. Like maybe stress or depression is making you act out. Act out. Setting boundaries was now a symptom. I asked her what they planned to do. She hesitated. They want you to apologize. Publicly. At dinner. And explain yourself. Explain myself. Like a child. Like I'd committed a crime. That night, I stood in my bathroom, staring at my reflection for a long time. I looked different. Not because I'd changed. Because I was finally seeing myself clearly. I saw the woman who had been overgiving to earn safety. The woman who confused obligation with love. The woman who believed suffering was the entry fee to belonging. And I saw something else. Anger. Clean. Focused. Justified. Not the kind that explodes. The kind that settles in your bones and says enough. I didn't go to the dinner. I didn't call. I didn't explain. That was when they officially turned on me. The next day, my mother posted a vague message online about ungrateful children and being abandoned after all you've sacrificed. People flooded the comments with sympathy. I watched strangers praise her strength. I watched them condemn someone who looked a lot like me, without ever knowing my name. That was the moment I understood something crucial. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted control restored. And if they couldn't have that, they were willing to burn my reputation to the ground. What they didn't realize is that once you accept being the villain, you stop being afraid. And fear was the only thing they had left. There's a strange grief that comes with freedom. Nobody warns you about that part. They talk about relief, peace, healing. But they don't talk about the mourning. The quiet moments where you realize the version of family you were fighting for never actually existed. After I stopped engaging, the noise faded. No more calls. No more messages. No more emergencies that only I could fix. At first, the silence felt like a victory. Then it started to feel like a funeral. I grieved the mother I wished I had. The brother I kept hoping would grow up. The family that loved me for who I was, not what I could provide. And grief makes you vulnerable. That's when doubt tried one last time. Late at night, I'd replay everything. Wonder if I could have handled it better. Softer. Kinder. More patient. If you're doing that right now in your own life, pause. Subscribe. This next part might change how you see yourself. What anchored me was something small. My bank account stabilized. For the first time in years, I wasn't panicking between paychecks. I scheduled a doctor's appointment without calculating who might need help that month. I slept through the night. And the guilt? It started to loosen its grip. I realized something radical. I wasn't selfish. I was exhausted. And exhaustion distorts reality. When you've been drowning for a long time, dry land feels illegal. That's when they made their final attempt. My brother showed up at my door. Unannounced. He looked smaller than I remembered. Tired. Defensive. His anger barely hiding the fear underneath. He didn't apologize. He never did. Instead, he said, "You know Mom's been really sick, right?" I felt the familiar pull. The instinct to fix. To fold. To pay. But something in me stayed still. I asked him what he needed. He hesitated. Money. Of course. I told him I couldn't help. His face changed. Not into sadness. Into rage. He accused me of abandoning them. Of forgetting my roots. Of letting therapy and independence turn me into a stranger. Then he said it. "If something happens to her, that's on you." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "That's not true." And I closed the door. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. That was the cost. I lost my place in the family. But I gained myself. They still tell the story their way. I'm sure of it. I'm the villain who chose money over love. Independence over loyalty. Peace over duty. But here's the truth they'll never say out loud. I didn't stop helping because I stopped caring. I stopped helping because I finally did. About me. It's been a while now. Long enough for the anger to cool. Long enough for the lies to harden into truth. Long enough for my absence to become the new normal. They don't call anymore. Not because they understand. But because they've adjusted. Someone else stepped in. Or things fell apart. Or they learned to live without the safety net I used to be. And that realization did something strange to me. It didn't hurt. It healed. Because it proved what I'd been afraid to admit all along. They were never helpless. They were just comfortable with me handling the consequences. I still hear about them sometimes. Through distant relatives. Old friends. Whispered updates that arrive without emotion. My mother tells people she doesn't understand what happened to me. My brother says I changed. My aunt says I'll come around eventually. They're all waiting. For guilt to win. For fear to come back. For me to remember my place. But that version of me doesn't exist anymore. And here's the part nobody talks about. Being the villain in someone else's story doesn't make you evil. Sometimes, it means you escaped. I rebuilt my life quietly. I learned what my own money could do when it wasn't bleeding out through obligation. I learned how calm feels when it isn't interrupted by manufactured emergencies. I learned that love without fear feels unfamiliar at first, but real. And yes, there are days it still hurts. Holidays. Birthdays. Random Tuesdays where a memory hits wrong. But the pain is clean now. It doesn't own me. If you're listening to this and you feel that pull, that guilt, that pressure, that voice telling you you're selfish for wanting peace, hear me clearly. You are not cruel for choosing yourself. You are not broken for needing rest. You are not a villain for refusing to be used. Some people will only love you as long as you bleed for them. And the moment you stop, they'll call you a monster. Let them. Because monsters, at least, are free.